Hello everyone, my name is Trex, and today we're taking a look at Spider-Man Brand New Day. So 4 years after the events of No Way Home, Peter Parker lives alone and is pretty much non-existent to the world around him as he focuses purely on being Spider-Man. Um, that's pretty much all I can say. This is really kind of a harder movie to give a synopsis to, but I was really excited for this movie, and while I didn't dislike or even hate the John Watt movies, they're just not my preferred style of what I really want to see from Spider-Man, and it just didn't feel like the character was really there. But I do appreciate some of the new things that they did. I am a defender of those movies for sure. I think they're all pretty good movies. And I made a video defending No Way Home, and it's my most popular video on the channel. Don't go watch it. I was kind of immature. Eh. I loved No Way Home, and I was really excited after leaving the ending of that movie to see where the series went after. Um, I was just excited to see a street level Spider-Man movie where he's sad and depressed and lonely with a new style of directing. Seeing more classic villains such as Scorpion finally entering the picture after being teased in 2017. Or, Tombstone appearing, or finally getting a really beautiful suit. The suit at the end of the last movie was great. This one, it's in the box the stand broke off, but the suit in this movie is better, which is really strange how that is. But I was excited. The suit is really just a John Romita's drawing come to life. So, the Batman, Superman, James Gunn's Superman, Brand New Day. This movie is what Superman and the Batman was to those series. The difference is Spider-Man wasn't really suffering from a bad drought. My point is, this movie satisfied me, and I think it was spectacular. It is the ultimate Spider-Man movie, and and it was just amazing. Spider-Man in this movie feels so much more lively, and the world around him feels so much more organic than the webbing Peter has. Everything from his swinging, his costume, the way that the movie looks, it just feels like Spider-Man. Now, in comparison to the John Watts trilogy, it can feel kind of bland and flat, and mostly visually. Visually, there were some good shots here and there, but those movies felt very safe. Whereas this movie has that has proper lighting and has that style interject. It's hard to go back, in all honesty. Tom Holland finally shows that he can play a good Peter Parker. And I've always liked Tom as Peter, but I always felt as if he was being misused. I felt as if things were too easy for him despite the losses that he did suffer, like the things that he was going through. He can use a fabricator to just make a new suit and has all of his technology given to him. And here he has technology. Yeah, but it does feel more realistic to the situation that he's in. It doesn't feel like he's just getting it. It does feel like he's earned this technology. And this is something I wish the movie did touch upon, was kind of like how he's sustaining himself and how he's living and how he's making his money, but that's okay. Peter Parker is just fucking miserable in this movie. Everyone loves Spider-Man, but no one even knows who Peter Parker is. It's a consequence of the spell he did all those years ago. It leads to some really beautiful dilemmas in this movie where you feel for him. His isolation, his suppression of who he truly is, plays into another big plot point of the movie, his mutation, which I think is probably one of the more weaker parts of it. His mutation doesn't really get used that much in the movie, I feel like. It's weird considering who the antagonist is. I'll get into that in spoilers. You know who she is, but it's spoilers. And honestly, the movie is a bit bloated in my opinion. It's not that bad. It's just that it has a lot going on. Certain elements can feel underbaked. There's a lot of heroes in this movie, but the benefit is that they all feel organic and interwoven into Peter's story. Punisher here makes more sense and fits much better than, say, Nick Fury or Talos says in Far From Home. Banner being in this movie serves an actual purpose and helps the story, and so do all of these heroes. They help fill the world out, and that's something that I do like. For once, I'm not bothered by these other heroes appearing, and I wasn't too bothered by Stark or Strange or Fury being in those movies, but it feels like Oh, we have to throw in another hero. It's some legal contracting. Punisher showing up in this movie makes sense. It really does. He runs into him. Of course, Peter would go to Dr. Banner, a guy who dealt with mutation before, and even with another hero, was just there to let us know what's going on with the world outside. Again, it makes the world feel lived in. And a panel that I really like that I can compare this to was in Fantastic Four, where Spider Man is seen swinging. He doesn't show up in the issue after that, he has no point in the story. He's just there. And I like that. I really. That's what this reminds me of, is that it makes New York feel lived in with a world of heroes. And that's just how I feel about these characters appearing. And as for the villains of the movie, this is a strange part of the film. Our main antagonist, who I will say is Sadie Sink, you know who she is not a Spider-Man villain. She doesn't play a Spider-Man villain. Hell, she doesn't play a villain. Like a traditional, normal, debatable. Not debatable, but most of the time, Spider-Man movies have like one or two straight up basic Spider-Man villains. We got Goblin, Ox, Sandman, Jamie Foxx, you know, the whole shabacle. Whereas here, it's so weird on who the antagonist is because this movie has normal Spider-Man villains, but the they're not the main threat. They're not the main problem. Scorpion, I think, is great. I love his suit. But characters such as Tombstone and Boomerang and Tarantula, they're not in the movie for that long. And I'm also really sad about Tombstone. That great casting, really underused. What you see in the trailer is what you get of him. Yeah. As for Frank Castle, however, I like him a lot more in this movie than I did recently. I've been losing hope with him, with my thoughts on him as John Bernthal, as Frank Castle. I voiced that in my Punisher One Last Kill special review, which I had to redo because of fucking Bowser fart. Let me actually make sure I don't have. Okay, he's just Punisher in this movie, and that's something I like, is that they just let him be Punisher. He's not. Do I want to be do I want to kill or do I not want to kill? And like he's toned down because it is a PG-13 movie, but I love his dynamic with Peter. It's hilarious and meets the expectation of what I want. He also gets to be a more lighthearted, and I like that. I like this version of Frank. NJ and Ned, I think, were also handled pretty well. A lot of people were concerned about their inclusion with the movie. I think they did a good job handling these characters. MJ is starting to feel a lot more like Mary Jane. I know she's not Mary Jane, but I feel like they're working towards her using Mary Jane as like a pseudonym or something. Um, yeah, Brand New Day Spider-Man is just the movie I've really been wanting to see for such a long time. New York feels as lived in as ever, with beautiful action sequences that feel natural. Peter Parker is at his absolute lowest in this movie, and it feels like the character that I really think has been misused. The movie gets a bit bloated at times, and some elements feel underbaked, but overall, I'm extremely happy and glad with how this movie came out. A minus. So, you know what time it is. We're getting into spoilers. Jean Grey! Let's get into Jean Grey. Weird that she's in this movie. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it. You know, it's just weird. It's just really weird to have this character debut in a Spider-Man movie. It feels like it's a hidden X-Men movie underneath. I don't think Sadie does a bad job at all. I'm not against the casting at all. It still just throws me for a loop that this is the decision that they made for this movie. The whole mutation subplot doesn't work out, sadly, because I don't think it's used to the best ability. Like, when Peter goes to talk to Dr. Banner about the mutation, and he's like, what do you decide what parts of nature are good and bad? That's a classic X-Men mutant plot right there. You'd think that would be used more for Jean Grey's powers, and it really isn't, surprisingly. They never address that Jean Grey is a mutant either, which is really weird. it just doesn't feel like Jean Grey is in this movie. And that's not me saying that Sadie Sink doesn't play Jean Grey, or it doesn't, like, that she's a bad Jean Grey or something. I think she does a good job as Jean, but it feels weird that this is the movie that she debuts in. I like, really? Jean, this is the movie we want to introduce Jean in? Her story works. The story they tell works for the most part. And again, I don't hate it, but I'm just still so thrown off by, like, it's weird. I've always thought that Sadie Sink as Jean Grey was a bit odd. I thought she was maybe too young, and maybe she is. I think of her as Max from Stranger Things, a much younger character than what I picture Jean Grey to be. And maybe the fact she's not in costume. But I will say, I'm excited to see her in X-Men. And it's also cool that she's our first X-Men mutant character, or first character of the X-Men to be in the MCU who's just original. And what I mean by that is whenever we have seen the X-Men previously on X-Men, whenever we have seen the X-Men in the MCU, and even coming up with Doomsday, they are always characters who have they're the Fox X-Men, with the exception being Channing Tatum as Gambit. But there, Channing Tatum as Gambit was gonna be a Fox X-Men, and then he wasn't. And so, yeah, Jean Grey here is the first mutant, as far as we know. They could probably say something different, where she shows up in the MCU and she's a mutant. Like, it's so strange. I don't know how I can word this. She's not the Jean Greys of the past. This is a new Jean Grey. And, like, she's just not from another universe. She's in 1999. Like, the X-Men aren't formed in this movie, obviously. And I'm very curious to see how Sadie would bounce off, like, say, a new Scott Summers. Also, hey, I'm gonna voice my opinion on the new Samara Weaving Emma Frost casting. That came out of nowhere. That, I was really surprised just happened. Like, really? We're already announcing Emma Frost? We're already announcing some X-Men? I didn't think we would see that until a bit later. But D23 is coming up. I'm curious to see if we're going to see some more X-Men announcements. We probably are. Odessa Zion as Rogue. I'm very curious to see if that rumor turns out true. And also, by the way, please, Marvel, keep Logan far away from this version of Jean Grey. Just keep her away, please. So, yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on how Jean Grey's handled in this movie. I think she's handled very well, but it still feels weird that she's in the movie. And that they didn't use the mutation subplot with Peter to the best of the abilities that you could, because that's a classic X-Men story. Now let's talk about MJ and Peter. So, this is another scene that I like. MJ relearns about Peter. And I love this scene where MJ just straight up says, "I do not love you, Peter." It's sad. It's sad. It's heartbreaking, but it makes sense because she doesn't know who Peter is, and it perfectly plays into that whole Peter's life is fucking miserable aspect. And the scene in which MJ kisses her boyfriend, let's just call him Paul, why not? Funny. And Peter runs away swinging, tears in its eyes. I think that's such a beautiful moment, and it what's lead to his evolution, his mutation. Again, this movie does such a great job on capturing that loneliness and isolation. And as for Yelena in this movie, kind of another little surprise, I like that she's in it. I was really hesitant and not sure why she should be in this movie, but now that you see her role, pretty simple. Peter knows who the new Avengers are. He goes to her for help, and she's like, little potato, small potato. Like she's being very playful and helps him out with what she knows, and it also gives us some insight on what the new Avengers are doing. And this is something that I do like what the MCU has been doing recently, because it feels like we haven't really been on that path since like 2022, 2023, a little bit, and that's the connective tissue of these last few films. You know, Brave New World has Bucky, and Bucky mentions he has to be a congressman or something. I think he's a congressman, if I remember correctly. And then Thunderbolts just addresses, yeah, our president just became Red Hulk. That's not good. In a little line, and also addresses Sam Wilson in the post credits. But in the post credits, we see Fantastic Four, so we see what the Fantastic Four were up to, and Doctor Doom shows up there. And then here we get I like that. I like that we're kind of building up towards Doomsday, even if it still is a bit underbaked. Speaking of Doomsday, nothing in this movie sets up anything. At most, X-Men in the MCU, but the post-credit scene is really interesting. So, Ned made this thing called the Spidey Tracker, which tracks whenever Spider-Man is here. It tracks another Spider-Man in space. It's very simple, but it's interesting. What does it mean? Tobey Maguire. I think it means Tobey will be in Doomsday. I think it's I don't if not Tobey, I think a Spider-Man will be in Doomsday. I don't think Tom Holland. Tobey Maguire is rumored. Yeah, very interesting. And yeah, that's just my review for Brand New Day. In all honesty, I did not put the fucking spoiler tag up. Oops, sorry. So yeah, this review was a little bit shorter. I didn't know really how to talk about this movie in all honesty because I like it a lot, and also I don't know, just wanted to maybe not overbloat it. I'm probably gonna do Avatar as my next review. I've been wanting to watch that, or maybe Odyssey finally, because I did write a script for that and I did see that and I love that movie. So until then, uh, Spider-Man. I'm gonna stop doing those.